Welcome back to Atomic Twister. Let's see how crazy things get in part 3.
Leak somewhere.
This rate, water in the waste pool will evaporate in 45 minutes.
Alright, so they apparently have a leak in the spent fuel pool as well as a primary system. Okay, that's really bad. 45 minutes is crazy fast for a spent fuel pool leak. So just to give you a sense, the time to hit 200 degrees in the spent fuel pool for loss of cooling by itself is on the order of 40 hours, even if you just put fresh fuel in there after a refueling outage where it's pretty hot. The fuel assemblies are submerged in over 23 feet of water. So a lot of water to both shield from dose and from the heat. This must be a really big leak they have going on.
No, Potter.
It's gonna throw radiation up into the atmosphere like a volcano.
And that is one of the reasons why real spent fuel pools are not even connected to the atmosphere. They are confined in a radiological controlled area in a building that does not leak to the atmosphere, and an HVAC system that sucks the radiation in even in the event of a fuel handling accident. They put this spent fuel pool in the turbine building for some reason. It also makes no sense, as in you don't want to drag fuel all the way to the turbine building. Another crazy design about this fake plant.
They're not responding. The electric pumps aren't turning back on.
Probably shouldn't have turned them
No
off.
scram procedures now. Shut off the reactor.
Without the NRC,
Oh my god. So they're implying here that the reactor system is connected to the spent fuel pool. The reactor is highly pressurized at over 2200 psi. The spent fuel pool is at atmospheric pressure. So no, that doesn't make any sense, and you wouldn't want to connect the two. So I can see how that one leak that they have going is effective both the reactor and the spent fuel pool. Oh, that is a terrible, terrible design. Also, you don't need the NRC to scram or trip the reactor. That's an emergency shutdown. Anyone with a license is obligated to turn the reactor off when something goes wrong that threatens the health and the safety of the public. Need the NRC permission. Wow.
What would the NRC say, Neville? They would say go to scram procedures. And the NRC is not here. We are.
I don't need the checklist.
Use the checklist, Neville.
Wow, that's the first time anyone displayed a modicum of intelligence. Yes, that's exactly what I was saying. The NRC isn't there. You are licensed by the NRC to do the right thing and trip the reactor. You have a reactor coolant leak, you're going to want to trip the reactor, and if it's big enough and you can't maintain it with your normal pumps, actuate safety injection. There, you're safe. Even if the reactor coolant system gets completely destroyed by the leak, you're still protecting the core.
it's bad, Corinne. We have another problem.
I don't want to hear it.
Really? They hit a button on a computer that's basically run scramprocedure.exe? A scram is a very simple operation that any reactor operator knows how to do, and it involves the push of a button. Button looks something like this. This is a manual button that you can pull on. You can see there are two trains, so even if one of them doesn't work, you can use the other one. Here's one with a key switch. Never really seen that one before, but if you have a key, note the covering on because you only want to do it if you really need to, but it's there and it's super easy. This is closer, so this is a breaker control switch. That's kind of the one that at the plant that I used to work at, it was just as simple as turning a switch to trip. Once the switch is turned, all the control rods fall in about a couple of seconds, and the reactor is safely shut down. Mission accomplished. It doesn't require any computer programming. It's a very simple action that anyone can do. By the way, if it fails to trip from the control room, there's a procedure for that. You just simply go out to the field and operate a local reactor trip breaker. You just open that breaker. It's as simple as, again, operating the local reactor trip breaker. It's as simple as just opening any other electrical device. And again, the same thing happens. Control rods fall in, reactor is safely shut down. Also, inability, so a couple of things for E-plan escalation criteria. The reactor coolant leak that requires to trip and initiate safety injection, or a failure of the reactor protection system would require an escalation per the emergency plan to stage 2 or stage 3, depending on how severe the situation gets.
Not shutting down.
Shut it down, Neville.
I can't. We've lost computer control from here.
Yeah, shutting down the that is considered an immediate action. If it doesn't work and you do it if it doesn't work from the control room, just yell out, reactor failed to trip from the control room, dispatching an operator to trip it from the field. Let the shift supervisor know, but continue on and use all your methods to trip. Another option, if things are crazy, start inserting control rods from the control room using a manual switch. That'll continue to lower the reactor's power level. It's not instantaneous, but it'll get you moving in the right direction. How this guy doesn't know that is beyond me. You gotta take action. And she just walks away again. Apparently, she just wants to talk to the NRC. I mean, yeah, she did give the order, trip the reactor, but verify to make sure they can carry out those orders without a problem. That is your number one priority at that point.
Sending out a car, but they think Helen Klein was hit by a second tornado. We're going to shut down the reactor manually, and then we'll divert the reactor's water coolant into the waste pool.
You're going to do what? Okay, yeah, secure the reactor. Got it. But you're going to divert the reactor coolant to the spent fuel pool? The reactor coolant is going to be way more radioactive than the spent fuel pool. You're just going to dose everyone by moving water to there. By the way, in real life, you cannot line up the reactor to at reactor pressure to spent fuel pool. You're just going to burst open a bunch of pipes if you try to do that. Because, again, 2200 PSI versus 0. Yeah. Completely different piping, completely different rating. Not to mention dosing the public. That's crazy. And again, there's spent fuel pools in the turbine building.
Can the pipes handle it?
Well, if we don't try, it doesn't matter either way now, does it?
Okay, let's do it, Gailey.
So I'm trying to come to terms with this crazy design. At least their reactor is in a containment building. The spent fuel pool is not, though, so really your priority should be to go over the spent fuel pool more than the reactor, as counterintuitive as it is in real life. Yeah.
And you increase the pressure to 2200 PSI.
2200?
Shut up, Potter.
Potter's meant to be the silly comic relief here, but he's brought some valid points earlier. And earlier in the movie, he talked about actually referencing the procedure, and his crew was nagging on him for that. And now he's about 2200 PSI. Yeah, piping for spent fuel pool isn't rated for that, because you're never supposed to do it. You can emergency fill a spent fuel pool in real life from about 5 or 6 different sources. And that's not including even your next string of backups from like getting in like fire hoses and all other kinds of crazy stuff. You can line it up to a bunch of tanks that exist on the plant. Or did the tornado destroy all of those, including the ones that were underground? Yeah. And you would use different pumps for that. You would use a low pressure safety injection pump. You can route that to the spent fuel pool. In addition to it just being water, it also contains a lot of soluble boron in there. Boron is used to maintain what is called shutdown margin, or think of it as margin away from starting up the fuel in the spent fuel pool like a reactor. Again, you could put pure water in there and it would be fine, but this would just give you an additional safety layer on top of that you wouldn't get with just regular water. But at this point, as low as there are, they should be trying any means necessary to keep water on that spent fuel pool, even if they have a massive leak. This is just...
Where's everyone?
In the containment room, shutting down the reactor.
My God, why? Did the...
Legitimate question. So this guy coming in, I think, is supposed to be Corinne's relief shift supervisor coming in. Apparently an entire shift has passed. And yeah, he has legitimate questions. They should be able to shut it down remotely, but this is a crazy, crazy design that no one in their right mind would ever approve for construction.
No.
There, that's too bad. Let's go.
What are those things? Spacesuits? That's not what protective clothing... Here's what it looks like. Just designed to minimize the spread of contamination, even if the entire reactor building is contaminated. And no health physics person in their right mind would allow people to go in containment during a reactor coolant leak. Forget the radiation portion of it. Remember what I said about it being highly pressurized at 2200 psi? People would die just from the overpressure and the heat of the reactor coolant system. Saturation temperature at 2200 is 650 degrees Fahrenheit. They're going to be cooked.
5 with a meltdown as its arm truck. Now, you've got 3 minutes to shut the reactor down. Or you'll lock.
They're seriously going in containment to shut down the reactor. God, this is such a terrible design. And this guy talking about a meltdown, just even if the reactor coolant system is completely destroyed. That is what safety injection is for. It'll keep the core cooled and covered just fine within the reactor containment building. Never need to go in during a reactor coolant leak. Never. Also, you could still evacuate containment. There are emergency override steps even after you isolate it. So safety injection typically will auto-isolate containment as well because it's needed to fight an accident, but nobody's using any procedures either. It's maddening. In an emergency.
Stage 3, we are at an imminent stage 4. I repeat, we are at a stage 4.
Oh, there's your line for the movie trailer right there. I rest my previous point in the previous video. Why would you have a stage 4, which means everything's destroyed, if there are no steps in an emergency response procedure at that point?
You did it! It's shutting down! The reactor's shutting down!
So this guy has to go in and turn a little crank. So this must be where the control rod system is too, because that looks very similar to a shim switch on a nuclear submarine. So they have to go into containment every time to do a minor routine control rod adjustment. And this guy probably, I'm sure he got a lethal dose with all that reactor leaking there, and also he would be dead from the pressure and the heat long before dying of a lethal dose. But who designed this poor location mess? There is a joke that SCRAM stands for Safety Control Rod Axeman, but they're taking this a little bit too literally. And again, they showed that it was just Reactor A. I'd like to think Reactor B is actually fully operational in this movie, and there is a super competent control room staff and a much better design plant, and everything's just fine. Those guys are doing just a good job.
Organized in 87, but we found the original 67 blueprints.
And?
There's another diesel engine in the old maintenance area.
So the NRC, federal agency, independent from the plant, somehow happened upon ancient blueprints from the design that no one at the plant knew about and found a super secret diesel. Oh my god. Operators, as part of their qualifications, are required to know every system, every support system, every backup system, and above all, every safety system. So the NRC reached out to the original E&C firm that built the place to begin with. Lord. One thing I will point out, and this would be anachronistic for this movie, but after Fukushima, which happened in 2011, emergency diesels, batteries, hoses, and other supplies can be flown in from a remote storage facility for an extended loss of power type scenario. But it wouldn't even be needed in this case. I know I'm harping on the same stuff, but it's a very painful mistake to...
Place exposed. We got a nuclear bomb going off.
At least they finally got the fire brigade to come in and spray hoses on there. It's not going to be enough at this point, probably too little too late, but at least they're doing something. But man, and then this backshift supervisor... Nuclear bombs, you cannot create the conditions of a nuclear bomb at a nuclear power plant. And, well, as far as these firefighters are concerned, let's see how long these firefighters can keep up before either the heat from the pool or the radiation sickness. So, there we are, they're fueling up the super secret diesel that no one knew about. And of course, the shift supervisor / emergency director is still doing it rather than having an operator do it. But I guess they got to show our fearless leader get down and dirty and save the day herself. Good luck on that thing actually running, considering it hasn't been run in 40 years. There was a part that I cut around about a subplot of them running down a guy to bring in the diesel fuel because he took the fuel and tried to hide it somewhere else because he was afraid of the storm or something. It is just that dramatic silliness.
Rods will be exposed in 1 minute.
There are any automated messages like this, but it is pretty funny. Would you look at that? The day is saved. They started the diesel, and now they're moving reactor water into the spent fuel pool. Or maybe not, because everyone's just going to get an even higher dose of radiation. Everybody showed up, but yeah, he probably got a lethal dose. So should everyone else in this movie. She gets to leave and be with her son. And by the way, she leaves without turning over to anyone to man the shift. Man, would I hate to be the oncoming shift supervisor right now after this mess. Just sorting through. Yeah, she's going to have to stay late and turn over a bunch of extra stuff and explain what the hell happened and why what they did was a good idea. Oh man, that is Atomic Twister for you. In summary, this movie takes itself way too seriously for how much they get wrong. I could understand if it were a dark comedy of some sort, but I feel bad for anyone who grew up with this and took it seriously. The command and control structure was non-existent in the control room, with a supervisor that would leave to go talk to the NRC, which clearly isn't their job. They act like the NRC is a tech support organization when it was really just the federal regulator. No mention of the company's onboard emergency response team. They clearly do not have one, or any health physics, radiological safety briefing. Everyone is incompetent. The design is a nightmare, probably even worse than Chernobyl if you have to cross-connect the reactor and spent fuel pool, and going into the reactor building to shut down the reactor or even move the control rods at all. Please let me know what else I missed during this breakdown. I'm sure I missed a lot, but I'm trying to keep this entire series less than 20 hours. There was so much wrong with this movie. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time.